I mean, I have no worry. I don't know how they take away my citizenship and like deport me, but I don't even know like why that's such a scary threat. Like, I'm not the 8-year-old who escaped war anymore. I'm grown. My kids are grown. Like, I can go live wherever I want.
Ladies and gentlemen, brace yourselves, because what just erupted out of Minnesota, what President Donald J. Trump himself has now stepped into, is not a scandal. It is a detonation, a system-wide blast zone of fraud, corruption, remittances, and panic flying straight into the halls of Congress. And one name is at the center of it all: ILHAN Omar. Tonight, she's not calm. She's not confident. She's not in control. In fact, no. ILHAN Omar is shaking on stage, firing off accusations, yelling about lies and racism and xenophobia, because the one thing that she swore wasn't happening, the Trump administration just dragged into the sunlight. Now, for years, people whispered that Minnesota's welfare system was being abused. Whistleblowers were shouting from the rooftop. For years, anyone who dared question those exploding autism therapy numbers, those skyrocketing housing claims, those mysterious nonprofit payouts, they were smeared as bigots. And suddenly, boom, federal auditors walk in under Trump, and within days, the whole thing unravels like a cheap rug. Paper trails, money clusters, identical deposits, transfers that don't end in Minneapolis but end 6,000 miles away in districts known for extremist influence. And now Trump isn't monitoring, he isn't reviewing, no, he's moving in. And the Democrats are melting down because they already know this isn't a conspiracy, this is a map that Trump is following straight to the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, hit the like button and subscribe. Let me walk you through the moment everything snapped, when Minnesota went from something feels off to, oh my God, this is massive, okay? Because when Trump's federal audit teams stepped inside the state's Medicaid and housing systems, the numbers didn't whisper fraud. They screamed it. Autism therapy spending didn't grow. It detonated from $2.6 million to $122 million in a matter of years. Housing stabilization services spending didn't rise. It exploded straight through the ceiling, landing at levels analysts say are mathematically impossible without organized fraud. Then the hammer dropped. The same suspicious patterns found in the $300 million Feeding Our Future meal scam suddenly appeared inside the Medicaid system. Same structure, same paperwork, same coordinated signatures. This wasn't sloppy. This wasn't accidental. This was a network. And when Trump saw that, he knew Minnesota wasn't dealing with a glitch. It was dealing with a machine. And now this is where the room starts spinning, because once analysts traced the Minnesota money, they realized that the money trail didn't end in the U.S. It didn't stop at Minneapolis nonprofits. It didn't stop at community organizations. No, the dollars kept moving straight into remittance networks leading into Somalia. And not just random transfers. We're talking identical clusters, repeating amounts, flagged routes, the same transfer chains U.S. intelligence has monitored for years. City Journal blew this wide open. Fraudulent benefits, autism therapy money, HSS housing funds, and meal program cash were flowing into money traders who operate in districts where known extremists.
There are moments in politics when something happens and most people only catch the headline. What just happened in Minnesota is one of those moments. Because while many Americans saw a headline about Trump ending a program for Somali immigrants, very few understood why he did it, how it connects to ILHAN Omar's district, and what kind of investigation triggered it behind the scenes. This isn't a small administrative adjustment. This is a decisive move aimed at dismantling a network that federal investigators say has been draining taxpayer funds, rerouting money overseas, and destabilizing an entire region of the state. Trump just shut down a program affecting hundreds of people tied to a fraud network worth somewhere between $250 and $300 million. And somehow, all of it circles back to Minneapolis and a political figure whose district is now under more scrutiny than at any time in recent memory. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly what happened, why so few outlets are explaining the real reason behind Trump's decision, and why this could reshape the political future of ILHAN Omar and Minnesota as a whole. And I want to do this in a way that makes sense, because this story matters to every American who pays taxes, who trusts their government to manage programs honestly, and who wonders what happens when those systems break down. So let's start at the beginning. What actually triggered all of this? What made the President of the United States look at one state, one community, and say enough? Trump announced he was terminating something called temporary protected status for Somali immigrants living in Minnesota, effective immediately. Now, if you're not familiar with TPS, it's essentially a legal shield the government grants to people from countries facing disaster or conflict. It allows them to stay in America temporarily without fear of deportation. It's meant to be compassionate, humane, a safety net for people fleeing genuine danger. But here's where things took a hard turn. Trump cited large-scale welfare fraud, money laundering, and the discovery that millions of taxpayer dollars had been funneled into overseas networks, some even reaching extremist groups, according to federal reports. He wasn't just ending a program. He was responding to something much bigger, much darker, that had been unfolding for years. Now, before we dive into the political fallout, we need to understand the system that allowed this to happen in the first place, because this isn't really a story about immigration policy. It's a story about what happens when oversight fails, when programs designed to help vulnerable people get hijacked by organized networks, and when state leaders either don't notice or choose not to act. Minnesota has become home to the largest Somali population in the entire country. We're talking somewhere between 75 and 85,000 people. That's a sizable community. Many arrived as refugees over the past couple of decades, fleeing violence and instability back home, and part of that community includes immigrants who received TPS status. Now, investigators began discovering something troubling. Multiple coordinated schemes were targeting programs meant to help vulnerable Americans, meal programs for children, medical support systems, housing assistance for people with disabilities. Think about that for a moment. Programs designed to feed hungry kids. Programs meant to help people with autism get therapy. Programs to keep seniors and people recovering from addiction in stable housing. These aren't abstract government line items. These are lifelines for real people. And someone figured out how to game the system to turn compassion into profit.
Good evening. Breaking tonight, President Donald Trump posting on Truth Social that he will terminate the temporary protected status for Somalis in Minnesota. In his post, he says the reason is, quote, Minnesota, under Governor Walz, is a hub of fraudulent money laundering activity. I am, as the President of the United States, hereby terminating, effective immediately, the temporary protected status, TPS program, for Somalis in Minnesota. Somali gangs are terrorizing the people of that great state, and billions of dollars are missing. Send them back to where they came from. It's over, President DJT, end quote. Now, we have reached out to Governor Tim Walz for a comment, but have not heard back tonight. Somalia's protective status currently runs through March 2026. Now, tonight, Congresswoman ILHAN OMAR responding to Trump's post on Twitter, saying, I am a citizen and so are majority of Somalis in America. Good luck celebrating a policy change that really doesn't have much impact on the Somalis you love to hate. We are here to stay.
Oh, man. So, great. I love that Donald Trump is doing this, but I hate to say it, she's right. This is 10 years too late. This is probably 20 years too late. It was in 1991 where they were given temporary protective status. And ever since we invited the Somalis to come over here into our country, they have been invading our country. It's like a long-term plan that they set forth a long time ago, and they've been following through with it. All right. They've just come over here, had anchor babies, planted their roots, grew a great foundation, took over the government in Minnesota, took over city council, Minneapolis. They got mayors, Somali mayors over there in Minnesota for multiple. Well, I guess there's one right now, one Somali mayor, and they're trying to put more in. But the fact that we have one in Congress, ILHAN OMAR, and she's so disrespectful, man. You know, it's like they knew what they were doing from the very beginning. They came over here with a plan, right? They were going to come over here, invade our country. They were going to take advantage of this temporary protective status, which has been going on for like 30 years, more than that, right? They came over here, and it's always been a money laundering scheme, just like Donald Trump said. We've been covering Minnesota recently, and there's been $2 billion that have been stolen from us, and it's missing. We've scooped back a couple $100 million, but that's only a drop in the bucket compared to $2 billion from one state that has been sent over to other countries. Well, not other countries, to Somalia. They've sent our money to Somalia. Now, we've talked about it before that, why are all these people doing this? And then they're not even afraid to get caught, because once they get caught, they just keep on doing it. Well,
we are back with another video. I definitely had to bring y'all this because ILHAN OMAR is scared to death. She's already know that she's on her way to being deported back to Somalia. So like right now she's doing damage control. She's running around screaming into the camera talking about President Trump is going after her people and that her people don't do anything wrong. She just saying a whole bunch of crap because she's mad that President Trump just ended TPS for Somali nationals in Minnesota because of massive fraud and gang violence. And I mean, they was like lying about autism. They've been having people going out in Minnesota just like recruiting kids just to say they got autism just to get money out of them and then send it over, to like Al-Shabaab. So we found out so much stuff. And now, right now, this woman is so freaking nervous. And that's the reason why she's having a nervous breakdown right now. We definitely about to get into all of this because President Trump is not playing around. So like I said, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Shout out to everybody showing so much support, and shout out to the one that always watches the entire video. I appreciate all of you that do that. Y'all definitely help get the video out there. So please let me know that you did hit that like button and you did stay to the end. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and dive straight into this. Because like I said, this right here just been starting to heat up, all week. And like I said, that's the reason why she's freaking out. Now, before we even get into it, I want y'all to see this before we get into the video, because President Trump posted this, and this right here just gonna make, the CNN, MSDNC lose their mind. So right here by Eric Dahl, they say breaking. Instead of President Trump putting Republicans, he put Trumplicans. He put Trumplicans. President of the United States, Trump, 2028, yes. Cue a huge round of meltdowns. We already know it's gonna be.
She lied on immigration forms. She appears to have married her own brother, and now the Trump administration is cracking down. And Representative ILHAN OMAR, she now has very real reason to sweat getting deported for immigration fraud. This is Kyle Becker with Explain America. Before we get into this story, please like, comment, and share. We appreciate your support for common sense journalism. President Donald Trump's Department of Justice is preparing to unleash a sweeping new campaign targeting foreign nationals who lied, defrauded, or committed crimes to obtain U.S. citizenship. And it's sending shockwaves through D.C. A newly circulated DOJ memo, issued by Assistant Attorney General Brett A. Shumate, instructs federal attorneys to, quote, prioritize and maximally pursue denaturalization proceedings, unquote, including against individuals who conceal gang ties, human rights abuses, financial crimes, or simply committed fraud in the naturalization process. That last category is key because according to overwhelming documentation, Representative ILHAN OMAR, she checks all the boxes. For years, credible allegations have circulated that ILHAN OMAR lied on her immigration documents, used a false name, and even married her own biological brother in an immigration fraud scheme to help him gain legal status in the United States. These claims have been backed up by archived school records, immigration timelines, and social media evidence, and were reportedly in the hands of the FBI as early as 2016. And yet, nothing happened. Now, under President Trump, that may change. The DOJ's denaturalization memo states civil proceedings will be prioritized in cases involving fraud or misrepresentation during the naturalization process, gang membership, terrorism or espionage, human trafficking or sexual offenses, or any other material deception that enabled a person to unlawfully become a U.S. citizen. And here's the kicker. These are civil proceedings, meaning the burden of proof is lower, and there's no right to a court-appointed lawyer. If the government has the evidence, it can strip citizenship and initiate removal proceedings. The DOJ memo comes just weeks after a judge stripped citizenship from Elliot Duke, a convicted child predator and U.S. veteran who lied on his naturalization paperwork. If they could denaturalize him, well, ILHAN OMAR may be next. And the Democrats are already panicking. Heritage Foundation's Hans von Spakovsky summed it up. Quote, I do not understand how anyone could possibly be opposed to the Justice Department taking such action to protect the nation from obvious predators, criminals, and terrorists.
The FBI alleges that Somali immigrants in Omar's community were taking government money to the tune of millions and millions of dollars over decades and funneling it to a group called Al-Shabaab, which is kind of like Al-Qaeda. And they were funneling our government money, our tax dollars, to this group. Now the federal government is descending on this area in Minnesota. And they want to start either denaturalizing people or taking people who are not yet citizens and getting them out of this country, especially if they've committed crimes like this. Now, ILHAN Omar gave a lengthy speech. I cut it down to the pertinent part, but she gave a lengthy speech about this and basically lied the whole time. And that's super sad for a representative of our government to do. I want you to take a look at this and let me know what you think in the comments.
In this country, we do not blame the lawlessness of an individual on a whole community. What we also know is that there is not a single evidence that the president or his coolies have put forth that there are any single resource from taxpayers in Minnesota that has gone to aid and abet terrorism. That language is dangerous. That language puts the lives of Somalis not only in Minnesota, but across the country in danger. And if the president believed that and he had evidence, he would take people to court. So we are sick and tired of the president waking up one day and deciding to put forth falsehoods and demonize whole communities while the ignorant people that support him then take the lies that he's spreading and use it as a fact.
markaan haddaan askarnahay Soomaaliyeed ininka ayni shaqeynaa habeenii maalmo ininka ayni taaganahay ma fahanteen horta sida ogtihiinba wadankan anaga qaxootiyan imaanay askar Soomaaliya ma jirin marka hadda anaga markii nala haygareeyay waxay noqotay inaan dadkeena u shaqeyno dadkii dhaqankii ma fahmeynaa luqadii ma fahmeynaa culture-kii ma fahmeynaa marka qofka kale ma taqaana ajnabiga abadaanka iyo anaga waa kala duwanahay because qofkii gaabkii waxa we build that bridge kaas ma fahantay marka insha Allah waa mahadsantiin again ogaada askari kasta oo Soomaaliya dalka iyo dawladaba ininku inii shaqeeyaa habeenkii marka hurudaan iyo marka ma taqaana achieftaanba ininka inii taaganahay.
Somali community is in question after President Trump announced last night he was terminating temporary protected status for Somali migrants in Minnesota due to fraudulent activity in the state. Now there are calls for the president to reconsider the action. Our Richard Reeves speaking with people who are directly impacted about their concerns, Rich.
Yeah, Callum, people in the Somali community definitely worried tonight. Our state has the largest Somali population in the country. The last count from Minnesota Compass showing nearly 80,000 people. It's estimated less than 1% have TPS. Still, there are fears about the future.
So this has been very scary. A lot of people are very fearful.
Percent have TPS. Still, there are fears about the future.
So this has been very scary. A lot of people are very fearful.
Board member Khalid Omar says there are several members here who are in the TPS Somali program. Some have lived in Minnesota a decade or more. The notion that President Trump might terminate the program has many worried.
At this moment, the only thing that can defend is the court of law. That's the only thing that can defend us.
She said, I don't know where I go.
We spoke on the phone with a Minneapolis woman whose niece fled Somalia 2 years ago. She says the 23-year-old now has TPS status, but unsure about the future. Is she afraid she might be taken out of the U.S. and sent back to Somalia?
She said yes, because Somalia is scared sometimes, so still I'm scared to go there.
For TPS holders, this is their worst nightmare.
Jailani Hussein with the Council on American Islamic Relations fears families will be torn apart. Children born in the U.S. are citizens, while their parents may have TPS status.
So most of the families impacted are mixed status, or some citizens, some on their way to being citizens. So this will definitely be a family separation policy.
The aunt of that 23-year-old says she hopes President Trump will have a change of heart.
I wish he changed his mind, what he's saying, because America is a dreamland and everybody wants to stay, and we want to stay the people.
Supporters say the TPS program is a lifeline and a legal path